This is Electrifying Classics, and this is my 1987 Defender about to be fully electrified. You may recognise this from when we first started electrification back in 2018, but some things in life just aren't worth rushing. Earlier this year, we went to the London Classic Car Show, where we met some of the best converters in the UK, possibly the world, and they are electrifying classic cars, making them fit for the future. Right, let's see what this puppy can do. Here we go. First up is Tiff Needell, car guru, racing driver, broadcaster, and let's face it, one of the most distinctive voices in media, giving us his thoughts on classic car electrification.
We are here in the wonderful London Classic Car Show at this beautiful building, Olympia. It's such a lovely place to have a car show. I fully understand the idea that there are certain classic cars which are so unreliable. They're beautiful, like a Citroen DS convertible I saw at last year's Classic Car Show, which probably would not be moving in modern terms. Some of the design faults were so awful. So there are some things, if you electrify them, you can then use them again, which I think is the wonderful part of electrifying some classic. As long as you don't change the looks of it, so it looks like you're driving it, won't sound the same, but at least it's usable. If they fit your lifestyle and where you live and you can plug it in, then they're great. I mean, I have nothing against commuting an electric car at all. But if you get very rare cars that have wonderful engines that sound brilliant and that are maintainable, can be used, are reliable, then I get a bit upset if you pick on the odd Ferrari or, it's a perfectly fine Ferrari, just to spend a huge amount of money ruining it doesn't make any sense.
So Tiff clearly has strong views on electrification, mainly that some cars are a perfect match for this process, however others just shouldn't be interfered with, and the Ferrari is one of them. I mean, who would pick on a Ferrari?
What have we done to the Ferrari? So we've improved the performance, so now it's 0 to 60 in about 2.7 seconds if you turn everything up. Power-wise, it's 450 horsepower. The original V8 was 220 horsepower, but the real seat of your pants changes when you put your foot down. All hell breaks loose because all the power comes on instantly. So you put your foot down, as long as you've got traction control switched on, you are thrown back in your seat and you just go hell for leather towards the horizon. But the other thing that the customer wasn't expecting, the weight distribution now that's electric is more like 50-50. So now, with that 50-50 weight distribution, it goes around corners and roundabouts like it's on rails, and the customer didn't expect that. I mean, I started doing this just purely because I wanted to use a classic car as my daily driver, as an everyday car. And to do that, I thought, well, the easiest way to do it is make it reliable, make it easier to live with and easier to drive. A bit like putting modern central heating in an old 200-year cottage. It doesn't detract from it being a lovely old house to live in, it just makes it more comfortable and easier to live in. And it's the same with putting an electric drivetrain in a classic car. It just doesn't detract from it being a classic car. You still know you're driving a classic car, it still looks like a classic car, but it's a lot easier to live with.
Richard is one of the pioneers in the UK and clearly not afraid of tackling any vehicle. And it's worth mentioning, there were no Ferrari engines harmed during the filming of this process. Back to Richard talking about the sustainability of this process and the environmental benefits.
The decarbonisation of the national grid, so where the electricity comes from, has been improving vastly over the last 10 years, so that there's more renewables, there's less coal-fired power station. The amount of carbon going up into the atmosphere from generated electricity has vastly come down over the years. All these press releases saying, bring on the electric cars, we can go right now. In fact, they're great because they fill in the nighttime load, so at nighttime the national grid literally goes to sleep because nobody's using electricity. And when does electric cars charge up? At night. Right now, the national grid can cope with millions and millions of electric cars charging up at night.
Next up is Steve Drummond, co-founder of Electrogenic, who clearly has plans to get us thinking and acting in a more responsible and sustainable way.
So I'm a clean energy guy. I'm an engineer. I've been engineering and financing clean energy for 30 years. If you go through all of the logic and see, well, how can you best roll out renewable energy and make a real difference and get the fastest possible transition to a sort of zero carbon economy, you have to do it with and through communities. One of the movements that we're very much involved with in Oxford and Oxfordshire is working with communities on renewable energy, and this business is in part a spin-off of that thinking. We've been talking about it and developing our technology for about 2 years now, and we plunged into business and bought premises and all of those things about 6 months ago. The pickup's a very practical thing because it's got lots of space for putting batteries in. In this one we're using recycled Tesla batteries because they're very energy dense and very high quality, and then all the electronics are all ours. Beetle, this has got a theoretical range of about 190 miles, practical say 140. We've stuffed as many batteries as we could in there. It's a very similar drive system to the bus. We re-engineered the gearbox on both of them, same gearbox, same drive system. It's just fewer batteries and it's a shinier package.
Steve is keen for us to reuse, repurpose and recycle, and the conversion of cars is probably just the first part of Electrogenic's journey. Right, time to find out what Matthew from London Electric Cars has been electrifying recently.
First year we came, I was called a bit of a nutter and told that I was ruining cars. The second year there was less of that. The third year there was none of that, and now everyone just says that they really want an electric conversion. So since last year's Classic Car Show, we grew from 2 people to 8 people. We now have 11 cars in the garage, 6 of which we're working on at any moment, plus a waiting list. So the biggest change is I'd say we've gone from being a small 1 or 2 man operation to the beginnings of a fledgling company. We're the first UK company to do a mini conversion, so the motor, inverter and gearbox, and we've stuck them in the original mini subframe using custom mini drive shafts. So that means that we can keep all the original mini hubs and obviously the subframe, which we felt just made for an easier and obviously more affordable conversion. We've used 80 of the 96 cells you'd get in this Leaf, and we've managed to continue to use the Leaf BMS, and that's another really significant breakthrough for us. We predominantly get the classic car, but what we're starting to see now, which is really interesting, is these really rather undesirable family cars showing up, which is best typified by the Fiat Multipla that we've recently had arrive. The family that own it, it's been in their family for 15 years. The kids are all small, they've grown up in the car, and they love it. Yeah, they could go out and buy a new electric car, but they've come to us and they've said, can you do a Leaf conversion on it? And that's what we're going to do.
So Matthew has been dedicated to getting cars in London electrified in a sustainable and cost-effective way for a while, alongside making the electrification process accessible, from the functional family 5-seater to the elegant sports classic. Although it's not a classic yet, the Aston Martin Vanquish is certainly an iconic modern design, and Callum, the car's prolific designer, talks to us about his thoughts on electrification.
We're at the Classic Car Show 2020. There's about 3 converters here. We sense there's going to be probably more year on year. Is this something that you can see growing?
The social conscience of people in cities will almost say to them, we want an electric car. If I'm driving it around work in the city, I'd rather be electric. As long as the infrastructure there is, of course, and that's another question, another matter. I think the big case is, are people prepared to modify the car structurally to do it? And if not, there has to be some very clever ways of keeping the integrity of the original car together. If it's a less expensive car, and let's say it's a Morris Minor or a Beetle, I don't think there's any harm in changing the car forever, because there's enough of them. But if you're going to take a 1960s Ferrari, you might think twice about cutting it up to put an electric motor in, but there's no reason why you couldn't adapt it just the same.
Amongst other iconic projects, Ian's Aston Martin Vanquish shows his commitment to unique and inspiring design. He has reservations over restructuring of the electric classic, but if it's a common car like the Morris Minor or the VW Beetle, then why not? The world of electrification is growing and changing, from cars, boats, bikes, planes, lawnmowers and even pets, and it feels like people are ready to consider the electrification of classic cars as a genuine alternative solution to keeping them on the roads and turning them into everyday drives. More converters are making their way onto the market, and we'll be covering their cars and their stories, so stay tuned, please do subscribe, and we'll bring you some electrifying content.